Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Karmic Gacha system in Modern Family World. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Transmigrated and Taking Over Ichigo's Body 2 parts. And What If Becoming a Mangaka in One Piece World, 3 parts, will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next 2 projects for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if hosting Q&A in One Piece World? What if Transmigrated in Ben 10 World as Ben's cousin? What if Transmigrated in Danmachi World with the system? Please vote in the poll and let me know which stories you'd like to see next. I'll take the top 2 picks and start working on those series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 386, Wedding Gifts. Edward POV. The lazy groan of the girl lying beside me stirred me awake. I blinked a few times, adjusting to the soft morning light filtering through the curtains. The weight on my arm reminded me. Both of them had used my biceps as a pillow last night, leaving my limbs numb but not unpleasantly so. "Mornin'," I murmured to my girlfriend as her eyes fluttered open reluctantly, her gaze rising to meet mine. "So, last night was interesting," I said with a knowing smile. Vanessa pouted, burying her face into my chest and hugging me tighter. Her eyes flicked sideways toward the girl on my left. "Abby! Wake up!" Abby groaned at Vanessa's voice and stretched out languidly, her bare chest pressing lightly against my abdomen under the blanket. Last night revealed a few interesting truths. Vanessa's motivations had layers, and Abby, knowingly or not, had been a catalyst. For one, Abby always acted like she had the moral high ground when speaking to Vanessa. So, to level the playing field, Vanessa had invited her into bed. Now Abby was an accomplice. No more pedestal. Also, Vanessa's own logic. Abby lived across the country, was focused on her studies, and posed the least threat to her status among the other girls. Her words. Not mine. I had to admit, it was a cunning move. Even Abby had complimented her on the sheer craftiness of it all. "Oh. Hi," Abby said casually, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. "Good morning." We got ready together in silence, familiar, comfortable, chaotic. But as we stepped outside the cabin, Alex saw us. She froze on the spot, went bright red, then turned on her heel and bolted away without a word. "Abby, when's your flight?" Vanessa asked as we walked. "I don't want you missing your very important job now that the wedding's over." Her tone was light, but I caught the subtle hint, an effort to get Abby moving along. Abby, however, only smirked and leaned in closer to Vanessa, making her immediately fluster. What? Nothing," Abby teased. "You just look so cute, Cupcake." She cupped Vanessa's chin and kissed her on the cheek. Vanessa went stiff as a board. "Hey," I cut in. "Only I get to call her Cupcake?" Abby grinned and turned toward me, placing a kiss on my cheek as well. "I'm flying back this afternoon with my mom," she said cheerfully. "Guess we won't have a chance to do that again. But if you're ever in New York, hit me up." With a playful skip, she trotted off. "That girl's an enigma," Vanessa said, shaking her head. She puffed out her cheek in mock annoyance and turned to me. "What? So, who's better in bed? Me or Abby?" I blinked. "We're not doing that. Ever. Besides, last night, you were even more excited than I was. So don't try to pin whatever it is you're feeling on me." Vanessa sulked, refusing to answer. Eventually, she nodded slightly and murmured, "Well, I gotta give you credit. You didn't go full beast mode and get all overly excited, that's for sure. I guess. You still love me even after all that, huh?" I wasn't sure how to respond. I mean, my performance might have been slightly under my usual standard, but it was more than enough to satisfy both of them. Thankfully, there were only two. My side effects were completely gone this morning. So if this situation repeats itself, it would have been a different story. There's a lot of wedding gifts, despite us not registering for the wedding, Frankie commented, staring at the mountain of wrapped packages stacked like some colorful fortress. She sank into the couch beside Dad and the others while I stood with Vanessa off to the side. Most of the guests had gone home. Only family and a few close friends remained at the ranch. I needed to fly back to California today to resume filming Now You See Me. It was frustrating. I only had 2 full days left to shoot before I had to fly to Cuba, with the president. Even though I was on a break, I still had a lot of things to do. Here. This one's from me, I said, handing Frankie a slim envelope. What's this, Edward? If you gave us money to buy our own gift, we'd be so disappointed in you, Dad said with mock disapproval. Why? What if it's a $10 million check? Would you still be disappointed? I asked with a deadpan expression. Phil, Claire, Dad, and Aunt May stared at me, speechless. Frankie, thankfully, had the sense to open the envelope before reacting. An ownership certificate, for an island in the Bahamas? She said, her voice rising in disbelief as she looked up at me. I pursed my lips, a little unsatisfied. I glanced toward Vanessa. I could only buy a small one. I wanted the sale to go through faster. I did want to give you something else, but Ness stopped me. All eyes turned to Vanessa, who immediately threw her hands up. Because the other thing was ridiculous, that's why, she protested. Then she turned to Frankie. He wanted to bury $100 million worth of gold and give your husband a treasure map. It would have taken him 3 months to find everything, if he could even solve the absurdly complex riddles Edward was planning. The room went dead silent. Then Dad stood up and placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his eyes sparkling like a kid hearing about pirate treasure for the first time. Treasure map? Seriously? Yeah. Would have been awesome, right? I even planned it out like the final Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Hidden clues, ancient keys, fake trails. Dad nodded, completely on board. Frankie and Ness could only gape at us, their faces frozen in identical expressions of disbelief. You two really are father and son, Aunt May muttered, exasperated. Frankie is pregnant. You can't just leave her behind to go gallivanting across the globe digging random holes. Frankie surprised everyone when she casually replied. Well, the pregnancy won't be that bad in the first trimester. I haven't had much morning sickness or food aversion. Honestly, I could go with him. That's exactly what I planned. I snapped my fingers and grinned. A honeymoon. Digging up treasure. Sun, sand, mystery. No. Ness, Maggie, Amy, and Aunt May all barked in perfect sync, shutting the idea down instantly. Frankie hugged me after the laughter died down. Thank you for the wedding gift, Edward. But you didn't have to give us anything. Honestly, you've already done more than enough for us, for me. A lifetime of favors, really. I hugged her back, patting her shoulder with a sly grin. Well, we're family. And besides, a wedding gift is an obligatory social convention. Don't blame me for giving it, blame society for conditioning me into it. Amy, hovering near the pile of gifts, picked up the island certificate and asked, So Edward, if I get married, will I get an island too? You want one? I can buy you one right next to theirs. No! Aunt May interrupted, practically lunging to cut me off. She glared at Amy before turning her attention to me. Edward, I think it's time for a hard reset. This kind of lavish, money-burning lifestyle of yours can't be sustainable. Ness let out a quiet chuckle and whispered, If only she knew how much money he actually has now. She's not wrong, I admitted, nodding to Aunt May. That earned me a few confused looks around the room. If I don't have an anchor, it's really easy to lose touch with reality. And I hate those kinds of people, the ones who forget what it means to be grounded. So honestly, please feel free to call me out on my shit. I'll be grateful. Aw, that's sickening. Amy commented with a shiver. Yeah, him being all emotionally mature is creeping me out. Maggie added. I just shrugged, unfazed. We moved on to opening the rest of the gifts, but soon it was time for me to head out. The chopper was waiting. Frankie gave me another hug just before I climbed aboard. Hey, Edward, she said softly. I have a question about the ring. I think I saw it glow for a second when I took it off before my shower. I smiled, leaning closer to whisper. Well, you know what I can do. The ring's enchanted. Frankie's eyes widened. What kind of enchantments? You cast another spell? Won't there be backlash again? Nah, this one's light. No backlash. Just a few protective wards. Increased health, mind and body, resistance to mind control, poison, fire, stuff like that. What? Why? Why would you give me a ring with all that on it? She looked stunned again. Then a spark lit behind her eyes as her voice dropped. Wait. Is this because you have enemies? Like shadow magicians trying to destroy the world, and you're the only one standing in their way? I beamed, unable to contain my amusement. Frankie! You've finally watched enough TV! She didn't laugh. She was still waiting for a real answer. I waved her off. Don't worry. There's no shadow magicians. I think. Never met one anyway. It's just a normal enchantment. Most of the jewelry I make has those effects. Frankie's jaw dropped. But you told me to auction those. Yep, I said, nodding. Sell them off. I don't need them anymore. Just check with the girls first, see if they want to buy any. Then use the money to fund the college sponsorships and inner-city outreach programs. But they're enchanted. Sure, but they're obsolete compared to what I can do now. I could whip up better ones in my sleep. Frankie stared at me, stunned, speechless again. It felt oddly nice being able to talk about this stuff out in the open now. As I boarded the plane, Sage joined me for the ride back. Dad, my cousins, and both moms decided to stay at the ranch a bit longer to relax. I briefly considered building a proper landing strip on the property to make flights easier. Wait. That's the broken money sense again. I muttered, snapping myself out of it. Grandpa would definitely kill me if I tore up his ranch just to land a jet. Once we were airborne, Ness curled up in her seat and fell asleep almost instantly, trying to stave off jet lag. That left me alone with Sage. She gave me that look, that judgy look. I poured myself a glass of grape juice. Not wine. Just juice. Edward, you know I don't usually stick my nose in your business. I blinked at her, feigning innocence. What did I do? She stared. You know what you did. I really don't. I insisted. She narrowed her eyes. You're not doing anything stupid, are you? Like, I don't know, messing around with an Esper serum? I kept my smile perfectly intact. You mean, finding ways to turn normal humans into super-powered individuals and using them as experimental data to see if they'll retain their humanity or turn into villains? Nope. Not at all. Really? Because I know for a fact you're definitely messing with an Esper serum. Well, not for that reason. Besides, have I ever done something irreversible? She didn't miss a beat. Your night with your ex and your current girlfriend comes to mind. My posture straightened instantly. Wait, I thought that was fine. Besides, it was her idea. Yeah, in hindsight, maybe that one's not fully on you. Sage leaned back, folding her arms. But that girl's gonna have a rough couple of weeks. Poor girl. I went quiet. Sage studied me for a second longer, then softened her voice. Or, it could be a lot easier if you just show her how much she means to you. She's so insecure about being with you that she even planned last night to prove she's fun, she's open-minded, she's a girl you need to keep around. That's not about fun, that's about fear. I never thought about it like that. Sage sighed. It's not entirely your fault. Maybe 15% your fault. But it's more her ex-boyfriend's fault rather than yours. I rubbed my chin, really taking it in. So if she brings up the idea again, I shouldn't say yes? Sage raised an eyebrow. Do you want to do it again? I chuckled awkwardly, waving it off. Just an example. What should I do if she brings it up? Sit down with her. Talk. If you say you don't want to, she'll think you've caught feelings for Abby. If you say you do want to, she'll think she's not enough. Either way, you're screwed. I stared at her in silence. Sage sipped my juice and said, It's better to be screwed now than when it's completely irreversible. So, don't wait too long. As soon as we landed in California, Ness and I sat down to talk. We almost broke up. But in the end, we decided to give it another shot. When I boarded the flight to Cuba with the President of the United States, I looked like death with a boarding pass. The bags under my eyes even shocked Vader. He looked at me, visibly concerned. What's wrong with you? Didn't get any sleep? I exhaled slowly. Something like that. We talked, for 2 days straight, all while I was filming. My brain was fried. If I had to choose between fighting super soldiers again or having that conversation, I'd pick the super soldiers. Abed finished editing the documentary just before Air Force One took off. I kept my promise and brought Troy to meet the president. The trip, along with me, was heavily publicized by the global media. The Cuban press remained skeptical of the president's intentions, but I was warmly welcomed. They called it a Cuban son coming home. Is it going to a streaming platform or theaters? The president asked, making small talk as we sat across from each other. Theater. I want some money back. Insurance doesn't exactly cover attacks from rogue, superpowered ex-intelligence agents, I said with a touch of sarcasm. He chuckled. Well, be sure to include that in your next report. That guy's still out there. I'm wearing my insurance, he said as he knocked on his chest, producing a metalling clanging. Maybe you should have one too, just in case. He smiled, adjusting his tie slightly, hinting at the metal armor hidden beneath his suit. No thanks. I can grab anything around me to be used as a weapon and I'm good to go, I said dismissively. I've seen the video, he said. You should teach me some of your moves. I don't think any of my instructors can fight the way you do. My instructors? You'll die if you train with her. I'll introduce you to someone else when we get back to the US, I said urgently. The arrival of the President of the United States wasn't met with fanfare as we landed in Cuba. No cheering crowds. No waving flags. No forced celebrations. In fact, the Cuban people didn't seem particularly concerned with the visit at all. They were focused on something more important, their future. After the revolution, they had already crowned their hero. Sato, once a quiet economics professor, now the chosen leader of a new republic. Elected by a weary, wounded population not because he promised miracles, but because he told the truth about the situation of the country. Because he stayed. When others fled, when the regime fell, he remained behind to help the country rebuild, brick by brick, law by law. With the help of some of Denmark's finest, the new government had finished the restructuring. And now Sato had to walk the razor's edge. Luckily, he's an android. Sato greeted the US president with quiet dignity. A firm handshake. A nod. No theater. No performance. Just two men walking toward the Palacio de la Revolution. I'm going to skip the diplomatic theater, I told them, subtly recusing myself. Thought I'd see the city. The two leaders shared a glance. Neither stopped me. They had their own show to perform behind closed doors, one of impossible contradictions. Because here was the truth. Cuba needed the embargo lifted. It was choking them. Foreign investment had stalled. Tourism was fragile. Imports of food and medicine, even with black market networks, weren't enough. Legally opening trade routes could give them breathing room, actual, tangible relief. But lifting the embargo meant dealing with the United States, and the United States did not deal without strings. Even if Barack wanted to, he's not the only voice in Washington. They would demand transparency, security cooperation, access to ports, influence over customs laws, and worst of all, military compliance. They are like insecure girlfriends, traumatized by the Cold War boyfriend, and now carrying the baggage in every new relationship. Sato knew the game. He wasn't naive. I didn't need to help him. If he publicly agreed to keep Cuba demilitarized, the old revolutionaries, many still holding seats in local assemblies, would call him a traitor, a comprador, a servant in Washington's kitchen. But if he didn't play along, the embargo would stay. And Cuba, still fragile, still healing, would suffer. Not from war, but from lack of food, lack of medicine, lack of dignity. Suffering, slow and silent, is the more effective colonizer. I helped to smuggle food and medicine into the country, but it would be much more efficient if we could do it the right way. So what was the play? Sato didn't posture. He didn't threaten. He didn't beg. Instead, in those closed-door talks, he'd lay out something shrewd. Cuba would remain neutral. They would not join military alliances, nor sign bilateral defense pacts. Their forces would remain defensive only. They would accept UN observers, but not U.S. military advisors. In return, they asked only for trade. No aid. No loans. No advisors. Just open sea lanes, fair tariffs, and respect. Sato was clear. Cuba will not sell sovereignty for survival. But we will trade fairly, with anyone who treats us as an equal. The Cuban people listened closely, not to the U.S. president, but to their own. Sato had been completely transparent in his plans. We'll skip the boring stuff. Bring me somewhere fun, Isabella. I told the tour guide/government official responsible for my trip here. Chapter 387, Cuba God Mode Part 1. Edward POV. The tour guide and I went to a nearby restaurant at my request. Some Cuban citizens recognized me and approached to take photos. A few young girls even fainted when they saw me. I still got it, I said, winking at the crowd, making a few more fall down like dominoes. Mickey, my private bodyguard, commented lazily. Has there ever been a time when you don't get it? Yeah, I do. When I go to rural Japanese villages, with populations mainly consisting of people over 60, I replied seriously. He gave me a side eye, and so did Isabella. As I walked down the streets of Havana, Mickey and Isabella grew more and more nervous about my casualness. Edward, shouldn't we get more security? Mickey glanced around, sweat beading on his forehead. The scorching sun, and the anxiety brought on by Peter Kotsiopoulos, the super soldier creator who was still free to roam the world, made Mickey feel like he alone wasn't enough to protect me. It's fine. Nothing will happen to me, I said casually, waving off his concern with mild annoyance. Suddenly, I saw something and left the group. When they turned around and I wasn't there, it pushed them to the verge of breaking down. Dude, nice ride, I said to a Cuban man driving a Corvette. He waved at me, smiled politely, and drove away awkwardly. I saw a lot of beautiful classic cars on the road. No wonder my aunt likes classic cars so much, I muttered, making another girl faint with a finger heart. Following a source of loud noise, I was led to a construction team trying to demolish a house. The house was in a state of disrepair and incredibly dangerous to live in. One of Sato's mandates in Cuba was to improve people's lives by installing sewer lines and bringing buildings up to code. The construction crew mostly consisted of volunteers and some disguised construction robots, so there wouldn't be any accidents on site. The volunteers wore smart bands on their wrists that monitored their performance and rewarded them accordingly. It prevented people from gaming the handout system and also removed cartel influences from the government. Currently, Cuba has adopted an experimental tier system. The tier system worked like this. Every citizen started at a basic level, earning guaranteed healthcare, education, and a living stipend to meet essential needs. But beyond that, rewards scaled with contribution. Students who excelled in academics or innovation earned scholarships and grants. Workers and volunteers tracked by their bands received higher stipends, access to better housing, and priority in business loans. Inventors and entrepreneurs who brought value to the community gained investment capital and public recognition. This gamified approach pushed people to actively build their futures while ensuring nobody fell through the cracks. They would actively try to raise their tiers for more benefits. Like a game system. I saw some scary, tattooed men working hard to dig the sewer lines. Although Sato had bought a lot of equipment, the reconstruction was happening nationwide, so the equipment wasn't enough. Right now, most of the android workers were building the sewer processing plant just outside of the city, and also helping with the blimp wind turbines. The power grid also needed to be reconstructed, as it was in poor condition. With my techs, the new power grid would be able to provide energy to the entire city with just 20 wind turbines floating around. Tomorrow, the wind turbines will be unveiled to the world. It was also one of the reasons the President of the United States was here, for the ceremony. With illegal trade cracked down, and cartels losing their sources of income, red light districts shuttered, smuggling routes cut, the streets felt different. Cleaner. Quieter. Safer. The government's grip was firm but fair, and the people seemed cautiously hopeful. So a lot of them had to volunteer to do the job. Suddenly, I smelled delicious aromas coming from a food tent. I walked over and saw a familiar face, my mother's former comrade, one who had returned to the country after the revolution. He widened his eyes when he saw me. Wait. Edward? Yeah. Jesus, right? Should I call you Uncle Jesus since you're friends with my mother? I spoke casually, my eyes glued to the beef stew in front of me. He smiled softly. Yeah. Call me Uncle. So UNC, how can I get this? It smells so good, I said playfully. His smile turned strained as he replied. Sorry. There's a strict rule, the food is exclusive for volunteers today. Unless you knock some bricks down, you can't have it. All right then. I'm going to register. Mickey and Isabella finally caught up with me, running and sweating for some reason. Please don't run off alone again. Isabella begged. Run? I'm not running anywhere. Both of them looked confused when I suddenly grabbed a large hammer and placed it on my shoulders. Hey, UNC, the band tracks distribution, right? I asked, even though I was already fully familiar with the system. I designed it, after all. Mickey facepalmed as I began to work on demolishing the house. It was easy work. One swing and the wall came tumbling down. Then I shoveled the debris into a wheelbarrow and dumped it all into a large dumpster container. The citizens were shocked when they saw me wearing a white tank top, tying an orange safety helmet on my head, and working as a laborer. There were a lot of pictures taken of the site, and it went viral in the media again. But this wasn't a media stunt. I just wanted some food. This beef stew is really good. I smiled in satisfaction as I munched on the food. It felt great eating after working hard. I ate with the other laborers who was laughing at the situation. It also made them weirdly proud for some reasons. Some of them told me that my roots to the country were deep, that's why it happened. I only volunteered for 2 hours, just enough to earn the stew. After cleaning myself up, I went to a theater show. Some of the college students were performing, recreating the events of the revolution in a Broadway-style production. Mickey wore a small earpiece that provided real-time translation of the show. To be fair, it was boring. But I pretended to be interested in it since there were reporters following me around. Suddenly, both Mickey and I were surprised when we saw a familiar face among the crew. Sage? Miss Anna? Mickey rubbed his eyes, not believing what he saw. Why is she here? I tilted my head, puzzled. After the show ended and the cast bowed, Isabella asked the producer if we could meet one of the cast members. Hello. Nice to meet you. The girl who looked like Sage spoke with a slightly heavy accent in her English. Miss Anna. Don't you recognize us? Mickey asked in shock, grabbing the girl by the shoulder and staring into her eyes. Suddenly, he shrieked, "Oh my God! She's lost her memory. Or PK has a memory-altering machine. We need to get her out of here, now." Wait. I stopped Mickey by karate chopping him on the head. I turned to the girl, who now looked slightly afraid, and asked, "What's your name?" "Anna," she replied. I waited in annoyance, even gesturing with my fingers, twirling them like a fast-forward motion, until she continued, "Ana de Armas." I gasped in shock. Is there something wrong with her?" Isabella asked, curious and alarmed. I took out my phone and showed her a picture of me and Sage. She too widened her eyes in shock and turned to Anna. Then I showed Anna the picture as well. She finally understood why we were reacting that way, and was also shocked. "I have a twin sister?" she gasped. There was a long silence in the theater. "Anyway, you should give me your number." I broke the silence with an absurd request. We didn't stay long as I needed to visit another place. "I didn't know we had a branch in Cuba," Mickey said with a happy surprise. "Is it Netflix?" Isabella asked. "Netflix is also here, but I'm going to the Entertain Cuban division. We just started it up." "Well, today," I said with a slight smirk. Later, the car came to a stop in front of a small, dilapidated building with a freshly painted Entertain logo on the cracked facade. Several people were already lined up outside, waiting to get in. "See? We already have visitors," I said playfully. Isabella and Mickey accompanied me inside to the boss's office, where only one young worker sat, Luis, who reminded me of Aunt Man's friend, earnest and slightly overwhelmed. "AAA. I've been telling a few friends about the movie grants," he explained nervously. They told their friends. And then, their friends told their other friends. And so on and so on. Now almost everyone in the industry here knows about it. I shrugged. "That's fine. It actually saves me a lot of time now that they're here." "Have they submitted their proposals yet?" Luis shook his head. We don't do that here. We prefer to meet face to face." "Wait, so I need to meet all of them?" I blinked in surprise. "Of course, you can decline," he said, "but with the Latin pride and all, they'll think you're not taking them seriously." I sighed deeply. "All right, fine. Just limit it to 10 to 20 minutes per person. I'll only meet with 10 people today. Since much of the equipment in the local industry was outdated or damaged, I couldn't simply hand out money and expect results. Reviving the Cuban film industry meant investing not just in talent, but in infrastructure. Upgrading cameras, sound systems, editing suites, and securing distribution channels. It was a slow process, but I wanted to rebuild the country's passion and creativity back up. What's a better way to do that with old-fashioned blockbuster movies? Although that's just wishful thinking. I just needed to be here for the beginning. Once the industry could move on their own, I would bow out. I didn't plan to take over the entire movie industry here. I already had a lot on my plate. We had the customary dinner with the presidents, taking many pictures to showcase the easing relationship between the two countries. Sato had been a gracious host throughout the day. At night, I snuck out of the presidential palace to enjoy the nightlife in the city. Of course, it wasn't by car racing. Nope, that was banned after the revolution. Damn it! Should I go to the clubs? I muttered with exasperation. I stepped outside alone, wanting to see the changes in the city firsthand. Although data could provide context, I wanted to hear about the city's transformation from the mouths of its citizens. As I was deciding, Sato suddenly jumped off a rooftop and landed smoothly in front of me. "Sir," he greeted curtly. "Should I report to you the details of the country talk now?" "No, when it's done. I want to see how you handle this without my intervention," I said with a teasing smirk. Looking disappointed, he remained silent. I asked, "Where's the best club around here?" "I want to sample the local drinks." Sato shrugged. "I've been in the office for weeks. I have no idea." Suddenly, another voice joined us as a feminine figure dropped from the rooftop. Robin, wearing tight jean shorts, high heels, and a deep-cut tank top, looking extra seductive tonight. She dressed to blend into the nightlife crowd and gather intel by seducing men. Ah, Robin. Have you found any remnant cartel activity yet? I asked casually. She shook her head. I've scoured the entire city. I don't think they're here anymore. If they aren't, I'll let local law enforcement continue the search, Sato said. After the revolution, various factions tried to incite chaos, and the cartel was one of them. Drugs and human trafficking were their main income streams, and Sato's crackdown and strict anti-bribery stance made him their enemy. By the way, sir, did you check the documentary before distributing it to theaters? Robin suddenly asked, concern clouding her face. Huh. I left that to Abed. He showed me some rough cuts. Did he do something else? I asked, growing slightly anxious. You better check it now, she urged. We borrowed an empty cinema hall and watched the documentary. After it ended, my expression fell flat. Abed, he needs to get punched, I muttered. Should I stop the release? Robin asked. No need. The documentary's still good. Just a surprise to me. But yeah, Abed's getting punched. I pulled out my phone and called Annie. She picked up in 10 seconds, despite it being nearly 3 a.m. The documentary had swelled to 2.5 hours. Abed had added 45 minutes of extra footage in the final cut. Hello? I'm awake. I can do anything, Annie said groggily. Annie, go punch Abed, I said. Huh? What? She hesitated, then said, Okay. I heard footsteps as she walked down the hall, opened Abed's door, and punched him while he was asleep. Ow! Abed yelped. Good. Thanks, Annie, I said cheerfully, my mood lifting. Anytime, she replied. What's going on? Ask him. I smiled. He'll know why. Afterward, Sato, Robin, and I traveled to a rural area far from the city in Robin's stealth Quinjet. We stopped at the foot of a mountain before jumping out. Are you sure the mountains are worthless? I asked Sato. There's only dirt inside, he confirmed. Perfect. I can use this. I reached into my bag of tricks. Though the afterlife was locked, I still had many unused items. Healing spells, summoning spells, and a collection of powerful gacha prizes, including Midas, turn anything to gold, one-time use X4. Circe, eternal, permanent transmutation, limited, X2. Seikikusuo, high-level telekinesis, one-time use X4. Magneto, metal manipulation, one-time use X6. There's a lot more in my arsenal, I told Robin, but I'll focus on this for now. Why didn't you use these abilities in the fight before? Robin asked, puzzled. If you had, maybe it would have been over quickly. I sighed. I didn't have time to breathe then, let alone think. I lack real fighting experience. Among all the skills, I was most excited about Circe's ability to transform nothing into something. If I knew the molecular structures of fictional elements like unobtainium from Pandora, Kyber crystals from Star Wars, Yoryu, adamantium, vibranium, or even exotic things like dark matter poop from Futurama, I could use it without hesitation. Give me some space, I told Robin and Sato. If I didn't call you, don't come back here, understood? I warned as I activated Midas Touch. Even humans could turn to gold, but the impact would be surreal, too risky. I had to be careful. I stood in front of a 400-ton rock, about the size of a 2-story house. Midas Touch required a whole object. Touching a tiny grain of sand connected to the ground would only turn that grain to gold. It was hard to find a natural boulder that size in Cuba. Sato ensured the surface I was about to touch was clean, so I wouldn't accidentally trigger the power uselessly. I touched the boulder with my index finger. Slowly it turned into pure gold. Whoa! The sight was mesmerizing. The transformation took a few seconds. The huge chunk of gold glowed beneath the moonlight. Surprisingly, the size stayed the same. Wait, if the size stays constant, the density must have changed, I realized. Rock to gold is about 7.15 times the difference in density. If it was 400 tons before, this must be 2,860 tons of gold. Is it safe yet? Robin called from a distance. Oh, yeah? It's safe, I shouted back. They appeared beside me. 3,212 tons of gold, Sato said, scanning the chunk with his android eyes. I nodded. The value will be. Robin interrupted, eyes wide. Boss, this might be a mistake. A heavy silence settled over us. The current value of gold in 2012 was around $1,600 per troy ounce. 3,212 tons would be worth roughly $165 billion. I admitted I'd made a mistake. I was aiming for around 400 tons of gold, which would be about $20 billion, a small but impactful injection into the country's economy. A gold mine of this scale could easily spark wars. Natural resources like this have a way of inviting greed and conflict, especially in fragile regions. History is filled with stories of countries torn apart by the battle for riches they never wanted to reveal. That's why keeping this secret is not just smart, but necessary for the safety of the people. Wait. I need to split it up and bury it in different places to delay discovery, I said firmly. I had already planned to use telekinesis. Concentrating, I began slicing the massive gold chunk into countless tiny pieces, launching them into the nearby hill and embedding them deep underground. Creating a hidden gold mine, I explained with satisfaction. Seiki Kusuo's telekinesis was undeniably overpowered. Guys, race you to the next hill? I said gleefully, starting to levitate from the ground. The enormous chunk of gold beside me rose effortlessly as well. I had already hidden about 1,000 tons here. Now it was time to do the same in 2 other locations. The telekinesis was so insanely powerful that even while carrying 2,000 tons of gold, Robin and Sato struggled to keep up, despite flying at Mach 3 speeds. Boss, seriously, Robin called out, her face twisted with disbelief as the wind tangled her hair. How are you struggling against those super soldiers? Is it an act? Nope, I replied with a sigh. Suddenly, my eyes lit up. I don't think the telekinesis is going to wear off anytime soon. I can probably use this for almost a day. Think, guys, think! What else can I do with this kind of power? Chapter 388, Cuba, God Mode Part 2. Edward POV. With Seiki Kusuo's high-level telekinesis, which essentially means God-tier precision, force, and multitasking, I managed to advance the country's plan by at least 3 years. Honestly, it felt like cheating. It is cheating. The pink-haired high schooler's entire existence is a cheat. If I wanted to, I could pull a meteor from outer space, levitate the entire Havana city, and pinch someone's butt-cheek from 1,000 miles away. Instead of having fun with the power, the first thing I did was roads. I flew across rural highways, lifting entire pothole-ridden stretches of cracked asphalt and replacing them with fresh pavement. I even built some roads that connected to remote villages. Compressed, then laid down stones, compressed again, laid down another layer, until a road appeared that could last 500 years. Roads are the foundation of a country. No machines. No crews. Just me, hovering a few feet above the ground like a lazy pink-haired god with construction powers. Again, Seiki. Why do you want to be ordinary? That was just a rhetorical question. Turning someone to a stone with his gaze, not able to touch anything because of psychometry, constantly hearing people's inner thoughts, I understood why he wanted to become ordinary. I straightened bridges, rebuilt some entirely, cleared rubble, and connected remote towns that hadn't seen reliable transport in decades. Cutting stones into squares and then arranging them made me feel like I was playing Minecraft. It took me only 2 hours to do almost $5 billion worth of work. The sun is almost up now, I said, bathing in the odd sense of satisfaction. If any of my friends knew about this, they'd think I was being a money fanatic again. Metori Psycho? The richest family in the world? Sorry, but with just one of Seiki's abilities, his entire existence was already shrunk to oblivion. Seiki's OP as hell. I was incredibly shocked. It was like he could edit the foundation of the universe itself. I didn't even break a sweat doing all of these. The power could be Seiki's true strength without the limiter. After the roads, I moved to the farms. Cuba's agriculture is stuck in the 60s. Great people, hardworking, but their tools were ancient. They still till the land using bulls, and sometimes they even lack the animals. I used telekinesis to till hundreds of acres of barren fields in minutes, basically ripping up the earth. Even wasted land was turned into farmland. Some hills became farms. I dropped fresh seeds with pinpoint accuracy, then, using a temporary plant growth spell I got from a gacha pull, I made the seeds sprout just enough, half-grown, healthy, and ready to thrive with minimal care. The sun was up by then. Roosters started crowing, but I didn't care. I hid myself with a camouflage spell and continued tilling the farms. While taking a break, I saw an old lady farmer with a hunched back going out to the fields, her legs shaking as she walked with a cane. Her eyes widened when she saw the new farm in front of her house, and her cane dropped. Her farm had basically increased tenfold. The new equipment would arrive later that month, just in time for harvest. It would have been hellish for her to do it alone, as she had been doing everything by hand. "God?" she whispered, her voice shaking as she looked up at the sky, hoping to see someone. "Why are you speaking in English, you old Latina lady who lived in the countryside?" I quipped internally. I chuckled and used my psychokinesis to help straighten her back. Crack. She moaned in satisfaction, decades of pain vanished. Then, she flopped on the ground. Seeing her house was shabby, I tore down the trees nearby and processed them into building materials before completely fixing her house. Grim Reaper almost reaped her early as she saw her house floating on the ground and was dismantled to the bone before new materials replaced the old ones. Then I flew away. "Gee, Godtio!" she exclaimed again, with extra energy this time. "Now English with a Japanese accent? Who is even that old lady?" I muttered in confusion. I also borrowed some livestock. Bought herds across the globe under fake names, teleported the animals here, and left anonymous payments behind. No one got robbed, everyone got paid, and now our farms have cattle, goats, chickens, and even alpacas for some reason. I'm not sure who added those, probably Robin. The deal for the farm animals was concluded days earlier. I just went to pick them up instead of waiting weeks for them to arrive. Next up, water. We needed aqueducts and canals. Some areas had too much water, others had none. So I carved channels through hillsides, built underground pipes, and linked natural reservoirs to thirsty farmland. Used stone from nearby mountains, clean, natural, and reinforced with metal using Magneto's ability. The water flows now, effortlessly. After that came the hospitals. Small, simple clinics in villages where doctors had to walk miles to reach patients. I fixed 12 hospitals that were almost shut down. Clean floors, proper plumbing, solar power, stocked with basic supplies I acquired from surplus warehouses and international aid that had been sitting unused. Then I got ambitious. "Let's build a train track," I told myself. Not just any train, a maglev type. Currently there were no orders for it yet as Sato planned to do it after a year, but I wanted it sooner. The fastest train in the world. I already knew how to build it, so I sent an order for the androids back home. They would be the entire trains, finishing it in 4 days for one. I ordered 12 of them. Maglev track construction is extremely expensive. It could cost around $50 to $150 million USD per mile, depending on terrain. To build the 540 miles of train tracks I was building right now could take more than $37 billion. But I did it all for free. I could kiss myself. Although I had to hide it all for now. By the time I was completing the tracks, it was afternoon. I ate lunch while levitating in the air. Sato kept calling me as it was almost time for the unveiling of the new power plant. Even the US president was calling. I just sent them a short message: don't postpone the ceremony to wait for me. I'll be there in time. I mapped a route from Havana to Santiago de Cuba. I cleared forests without harming ecosystems, built raised tracks with reinforced concrete and metallic supports, and made stations every 100 kilometers. Well, just shabby stations. My psychokinesis could help me to cut the trees, but for the metal part of the tracks, I needed to pull some magneto-level manipulations. By activating that skill and pulling metal from some metal mines around, I molded them to create the train tracks. It wasn't operational yet, still needed the trains and tech, but the foundation was done. Ready for engineers to fill in the details. The tracks were the most important part here, and that part was almost finished. It's a good thing most of the countrymen's attention was on the TV, waiting for the president's speech. No one really noticed what was going on. Wait a fucking minute! I suddenly had an idea. Why didn't I think of this sooner? I flew at high speed toward the sea but stopped about 100 miles off the Cuban coast. Well, I guess I can wait until the ceremony. Wait, I can build a fish farm too. There's so much to do, so little time. Why am I so high profile? I could have done all this uninterrupted if I were just an ordinary guy. I returned to Havana reluctantly. There were several things I wanted to test out with these powers. First was methane hydrates, also called fire ice, as it exists in a solid, ice-like form in the seabed but burns when exposed to air. 1 cubic meter of solid methane hydrate can release over 160 cubic meters of methane gas. The world's oceans contain more energy in hydrates than all fossil fuels combined. But extracting it without causing landslides or releasing massive greenhouse gases is the big issue. In my previous life, some countries had begun experimenting with extraction, Japan, China, and the USA being the ones who succeeded so far, but no one had commercial extraction yet. The process was too unstable. Second, I wanted to shoot the garbage patch island into the sun. 2 years and almost $5 billion later, my NGO had only cleaned up 12% of the garbage there. Third, some sea treasures. Maybe I'd dive down to the Titanic using a psychokinesis shield instead of my original plan of using a submarine. No billionaire ever died in a submarine under the sea before. I could try to find the heart of the ocean, that gem Rose so stupidly threw into the sea. I knew the necklace was fictional, but there had to be other real treasures on that ship, right? While I was at it, maybe I'd swing by the San Jose galleon. The Spanish treasure ship that sank in 1708 near Colombia, supposedly carrying over $20 billion in gold and jewels. In my past life, the Colombian Navy discovered it in 2015. The oceans were full of lost riches. Who knew what I could find? Maybe I'd even find a school of fish and bring them back to Cuba's waters. Our population was weak, and restocking our fisheries could help. I might even start a fish farm while I was at it. Seiki-kun. You're the greatest gacha pull I've ever gotten. I muttered. Too bad I've only got 14 more hours left. And now I have to waste time giving a speech. I could have, well, wait. I can't clone myself. But transforming someone else into me wouldn't be hard. So, you want me to do it? Robin asked, her expression lighting up. You want me to act like you for the rest of the day? I looked at her as I arrived 10 minutes before the ceremony. Can you? I raised an eyebrow. Her grin was unsettling. Of course. I'd love to, she giggled. That made my senses tingle with warning, but I pushed the thought aside and transformed her into me before flying off again. I saw the blimp slowly ascend to the sky from afar. There was a huge crowd of people watching from the plaza where Sato would give his speech later. It seems everyone is excited. I smiled softly. Edward/Robin POV. I really wish he'd stop tearing up the ground whenever he leaves. We could only do so much to cover up the trails he left behind. There was also a report about an old lady becoming hysterical after her back was miraculously straightened. Yeah, definitely his doing. He pulled a god mode and built a waterfall, a dam, a hydroelectric plant, in just a few hours. I was in awe of him. Now, how does he usually act again? Should I chew bubble gum, wear his hat sideways, throw on some gold chains with a big dollar sign, and put on sunglasses? As I checked my reflection, I started to worry the transformation didn't work right. Despite the flawless face, there was none of the magnetism. Edward's appeal wasn't just physical, it was metaphysical. It couldn't be replicated. We all called it the golden halo. Teruhashi's Bishounen aura. From any angle, he looked perfect. He could sneeze, and some girls would faint. That's why wearing his image for a little while felt exhilarating. I tried pulling in my chin to give him a double chin for a bad photo. Then I half sneezed and took another shot. He looked terrible. Satisfied, I used his account to send the photo to all his friends. They'd appreciate it. It's time for the ceremony, Sato announced. We stepped onto the stage, facing a sea of more than 100,000 people. Yes, 100,000 people showed up just to witness the activation of the new power plant. Dusk had already settled in, and the sky was starting to darken. About an hour ago, the grand launch of the air blimps had taken place. We'd already tested the plant, storing backup energy in case city consumption spiked above the limit. Even if the blimps failed, we had a contingency. A reworked Android core reactor inside the facility. It could power the entire city for over 5 months if necessary. A massive screen had been set up for the crowd to display the stored energy in real time. Now Sato stepped up to announce the moment everyone had been waiting for, the shutdown of the old power plant, and the activation of the new one. The final switch had been delayed until this moment to avoid disrupting daily life. Lights began to fill the city as the sun went down. "My fellow Cubans," he said in a deep voice. I thought of it as cute. Sato was apprehensive about being the leader of the country, as it meant that he needed to talk with people. Amongst all of us, he and Yuri Alpha were the less talkative ones. They could go weeks without even uttering a single word. Today is more than the launch of a power plant. It is the beginning of a new current, one that flows not just through wires and turbines, but through the soul of this nation. Pfft. I almost burst out in laughter. Sato even glanced at me, with a slight blush on his face. He wrote the speech himself, so that meant he thought of the pun and decided it was good. We remember our past. A past of struggle. Of darkness. Of having too little for too long. But that hardship gave us something priceless: unity. Strength. Resilience. And today, we take that resilience and turn it into light. This power plant doesn't just power buildings, it powers dreams. Factories. Schools. Hospitals. Families. It tells every child in Cuba that the future is not something we wait for, it's something we build. Let this be our first step, not our last. A Cuba where no child fears the dark. A Cuba that shines so brightly, the world can't help but see us. We rise not as a miracle, but as a choice. Thank you, and welcome to the new Cuba. He stepped back. For a few seconds, the plaza was utterly silent, like the whole country had paused to take a breath. Then the cheers erupted. A thunderous wave of clapping, shouting, whistling. Firecrackers went off. Horns blared. A woman in the front row threw her crutches into the air. Someone caught them. Children on rooftops waved little Cuban flags stitched with the new energy sigil. The noise swelled into a wall of sound that vibrated through the ground. I chuckled at the sight. On the giant curved screen behind the stage, the data display shifted. Main grid transfer, live feed. Current grid output, old plant 142.7 megawatts. New system capacity, 500 megawatts, with 250 megawatts reserve. Solar blimp contribution, 61.4 megawatts stable. Wind towers, East Coast 37.2 megawatts, fluctuating. Android core backup, standby, operational. City consumption, live. Havana, 91.3 megawatts. Santiago de Cuba, 27.5 megawatts. Pinar del Rio, 8.2 megawatts. Rural zones, 14.1 megawatts. Total, 141.1 megawatts. System stress, 28.2%, within safe range. Transfer ready, said Sato into his mic. Final switch, on your command. We'll count down starting at 10. The crowd chanted. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I did the honors of pulling the lever. Clank. HHHZZZZMMM. The entire stage rumbled slightly beneath their feet as the electromagnetic relays shifted. Main grid transfer complete. New system, active. Old plant, decommissioning. The screen updated again. A stylized animation of blimps hovered above a glowing Cuba, each one pulsing with stored energy. Then something magical happened. All across the island, lights turned on in sync, streetlights, house bulbs, even the stadium floodlights across the harbor. Like a wave of golden illumination spreading from Havana outward. The effect had been planned for drama, and it paid off. Everyone could see it. A literal dawn unfolding. A sobbing old man dropped to his knees. A child in the crowd screamed. The data screen flashed again, now showing. Efficiency score, 96.7%. Projected cost savings, monthly $17.3 million USD. Estimated carbon offset, 98,000 tons/year. The power plant could run almost perpetually, only requiring occasional maintenance. Multiple news outlets from around the world arrived to witness the unveiling. Cuba had become one of the rare nations on Earth to be completely self-sufficient, no longer dependent on fossil fuels. Even the President of the United States felt pressured by this. Back in D.C., I could practically hear oil executives choking on their brandy and cabinet members sharpening their resignation letters. Cuba, of all places, had just leapfrogged the first world in energy efficiency, publicly, spectacularly, and under the nose of a U.S. president who applauded instead of suppressing. It wasn't just a light show. It was a revolution of optics. And the liberals? Oh, they were going to have a field day. For years, they had begged for something like this. Now here it was, an island nation, long mocked as backward, lighting up its cities with wind and solar-fed blimps and decentralized grid technology. Cleaner than anything New York had ever dreamed of. Even though Cuba's energy usage was only 1/5 of what New York required, it was the idea behind it that people were celebrating. It made every Green New Deal sound like a toddler's science fair project. It exposed just how bloated and inefficient the U.S. power grid had become, how every blackout and inflated utility bill back home was no longer inevitable, but inexcusable. But that was exactly the problem. Edward had created something too pure, too undeniable. The oil giants couldn't market their way out of it. The think tanks couldn't spin it fast enough. This wasn't theory, it was execution. Clean energy, live on screen, powering over 11 million people with excess capacity to spare. The publicity created a kind of first line of defense for the country. Without it, there would have already been silent efforts to wipe us out. The idea alone threatened trillions in fossil fuel infrastructure, decades of lobbying, and the very shape of global trade routes. If Cuba started exporting the tech, or worse, giving it away, we could expect immediate retaliation. Even now, traditional U.S. media was spinning the story, claiming it was fake news. How long could they keep that up? I didn't know. If I'm being honest, I was tired of these greedy people. I wanted to wipe them all out. It would be better to destroy the old system completely and build a new one, with Edward at the top. But seeing that Edward hadn't given up on them, I decided to let it go for now. We never told the world that Edward was the architect behind the power plant and the solar blimps. But in Cuba, almost everyone knew. That's why he was the one chosen to pull the lever. I snuck out of the ceremony once it was over. Later, Sato came by to talk in my room. "Are you sure about greenlighting that?" he asked. "What? I'm the master for the day, aren't I? I think I can do that," I replied mischievously. He sighed. "But that's the story of his mother. And now the country wants to turn it into a movie. Speaking of movies, what about the documentary? What's the first day box office?" I asked, changing the subject. "Only 50 million. Though it might earn more over the weekend," Sato said. "Just before dawn, we received a signal from Edward. It led us to the house where his mother used to live. It had been burned to the ground during Miranda's failed revolution 2 years ago. But now, a new building had taken root on the same soil. There wasn't a single trace of Carmen's family mansion left, no resemblance at all. When I asked Edward about it, he smiled and said, 'Rather than recovering from the nightmare, I built the house my mother always dreamed of. I'm thinking of bringing her back to visit someday, so I need to create this place for her.' His behavior always made me confused. Why did a god like himself try to cater to these simple beings? The country, his family, his hobbies, were all puzzling but intriguing to watch. I would continue to watch him. And as long as he's still around, maybe I would understand why he's doing all of this. Chapter 389 Docs. General POV. Lily, the fan club president, brought along the other members and bought out all the tickets for the documentary's premiere. Seriously? 2.5 hours? For a documentary? This is going to be a bore fest, isn't it? Was the initial impression from some moviegoers. Well, at the very least, we'll get to see some super soldier fights. Another one joked. Dark screen. A faint heartbeat. Echoes of screaming fans fade into silence. Clips begin, Edward on stage, backlit by lights. Cut to Edward walking down an alley, his back to the camera. A bruised fist. An explosion. A concert spotlight. Footsteps on broken glass. Text appears on screen. Director Abed Nadir. Edward Newgate, boy genius. He curated an image of himself for the world. Mischievous, fun, dangerously talented. An idol. A performer. A mask. In this documentary, we'll show you the man behind the myth. Through never-before-seen footage captured from the button cams of his own security team. And through the stories of those who truly knew him. This is not just a profile. This is a dismantling. This is the price of brilliance. Final montage before the title, Edward laughing on stage. Cut to him covered in blood. Title screen appears. Edward Newgate, human. All of Edward's friends gathered at his mansion to watch the documentary in his indoor theater. It was a better experience than being at the actual premiere. That's a very strong opening, Enid remarked, turning to Jenna, who was visibly sweating. What's wrong with you? She asked. Nothing. I'm just nervous for me, I mean for Edward. Will his image survive this? Jenna stammered. Alex rolled her eyes. If his image was going to be ruined, he wouldn't have let the documentary be released. She stopped mid-sentence as a new line appeared on screen. Disclaimer: this documentary was released without Edward Newgate viewing the final cut. Oh shit. The director went rogue, Jacob muttered. Enid opened her mouth to respond, but the film surged forward. Music begins, Skyfall, Adele, written by Edward and recorded with Adele days earlier.
This is the end. Hold your breath and count to 10.
A dramatic montage begins, catching everyone's full attention. Scene 1, NCS kidnapping crisis. Grainy global news footage. Edward is tied up, bruised, cuffed. Red emergency lights flicker. A stern, elderly man speaks in the background. Voiceover, newscaster. This morning, a live feed showing Edward Newgate, allegedly kidnapped by the acting NCS director, went viral across the globe. A subtle twitch of Edward's fingers. A sidelong glance. No panic. Cut to static.
Feel the earth move and then hear my heart burst again.
Scene 2, Yakuza standoff. Surveillance footage. Edward in a black suit, standing silently across from a dozen Yakuza members in a neon-lit alley. Rain falls hard. Shot from behind. The camera pans to Max, kneeling, tied up beside them, her eyes filled with fear.
Oh, this is the end. I've drowned and dreamt this moment.
3. Human trafficking auction. Shaky hidden footage. Edward stands shirtless on a raised platform, wrist cuffed, a chain around his neck. Cold industrial lights. Masked bidders whisper among themselves.
So overdue, I owe them. Swept away, I'm stolen.
Scene 4, Missile Crisis. Edward stands alone before a glass wall, watching as a missile rises from the sea toward his house. He doesn't move. He sings softly, his voice overlapping with Adele's.
Let the sky fall when it crumbles. We will stand tall, face it all together.
Scene 5, various quick cuts. Edward punching a corrupt producer. Slapping teenage boys at a pool party as they harass a girl. Lying unconscious in a hospital bed. Diving into a burning house to save his teacher. A still image of that viral photo, shirt burned, carrying the teacher to safety. Let the
sky fall when it crumbles. We will stand tall and face it all together at skyfall.
As the music fades, a slow, throbbing sound replaces it. A line appears across the screen. A hero's journey is full of thorns. Enid's eyes lit up. Excited, she grabbed Jenna's arm and began shaking it vigorously. What? They are going to show everything? Oh my God! Enid shrieked in a high-pitched voice. The documentary started with Chapter 1, Origin Story. It showed how Edward behaved before he became a superstar. Jenna appeared in the documentary, sharing her experience of getting saved by Edward from a bunch of horny teenagers. She also shared how Edward saved her from getting molested by a dirty producer. Both of the recounts were before Edward went mainstream, so people could see his character. A behavioral therapist commented on Edward's upbringing. She hypothesized that Edward had some acceptance issues and abandonment anxiety. She added, without a lack of role models in his life, Edward was prone to use fiction in building up his personality. Spider-Man, Monkey D. Luffy, all played a part in his persona. Abed cuts the comment to a short scene of Edward in Japan, buying out multiple stacks of mangas. Chapter 1 went on for quite a while. Abed even covered Edward's time as a classical musician, all the awards he won, recollection from his dad about his past, and even the incident where he fainted on the stage. The audience were quite surprised by it. Chapter 2 started, and it was titled Uprising. It shared how Edward combined his inventions and music career together. From working on a website for a closet company, working on a mobile game, and singing at a cafe, the audience saw Edward's hustler mentality and how hard he worked. Jay even commented on the website, appearing in the documentary. Pepper became one of the main documentary casts that would appear until the end. Chapter 3, A New Legend. Chapter 3 began to show his start as an artist. From opening Taylor's concert, to releasing his first single and album, the audience felt like they were witnessing a historic event firsthand. Taylor appeared in the show, recollected the event where Edward saved her from her previous agency. How the agency director was exploiting her, and even got in jail for internal trading. She commented that if she stayed there, she could have become implicated by it. An hour into the documentary, Abed changed the theme of the documentary. With a burst of unsettling music, the documentary entered Chapter 4, Dark Side of Fame, which was the chapter everyone was waiting for. Abed appeared on the screen and said, "Everyone knows about the kidnapping incident. But not many know that it wasn't an isolated incident." The footage from Hawaii was shown. A bullet mark on the hotel wall. The assassination attempt was exposed. 2 more assassination attempts were shared. Abed finally showed the audience why. Pepper said with concern, "The motives for the assassination was varied, but at this time, it was because of the diabetes cure." A short footage of the research lab, coupled with the recorded threats by the politicians and the big pharma executives, were all exposed in the documentary. People began to feel disgusted by the two-faced nature of the politicians, and also how big pharma wanted to exploit the patients. It wasn't a good business model to cure your patients. The sentence rang clear inside the audience's brains. But what sickened them more was about the human auction. The king's family auction, where Edward was kidnapped from the streets of Italy and was chained on the neck. The audience's blood boiled as they saw the recreated scene coupled with some real ones. Barbara Palin appeared in the documentary, and she opened up about her experience, and how Edward's security team saved her. "When they put you under the drug, you cannot remember anything. It made me feel sick to my stomach. Edward understood that, and he stayed by my side, helping me to get through the horrible experience." Barbara cried. Enid, Jenna, Elsa, and most of the girls who were watching the documentary cried too. Chapter 5, Playing the Long Game. Abed showed how Edward slowly changed the reality in the country. How he convinced some politicians to change their votes, how he became targeted for it. Everyone knew the NCS director kidnapped Edward because of his supposed mind control ability, but no one knew why he thought Edward had that Esper ability. As Abed showed everyone Edward's efforts, some got goosebumps, some even started to tear up. The main attraction of the documentary, the fight between the super soldiers and entertained security members, was played out. Some martial art analysts commented on the footage taken by the security member bodysuit, which had a direct shot of Edward fighting with the super soldiers on equal terms. The fight scene was incredibly fluid and Edward's handsome face was in full view, which made a lot of people fall for him again. The sparks when he clashed his metal rod with the agent's knife, how he got punched and kicked but never fell down and retaliated immediately, the blood on his body, the sweats. Enid gasped and began to cry as she saw how hard Edward was struggling. Suddenly, a musical sequence started to play. NF Hope.
Hope, yeah, I'm on my way, I'm coming. Don't lose faith in me.
Edward stood in front of the microphone inside his recording studio. The footage was obtained from Pepper.
I know you've been waiting. I know you've been praying for my soul.
Abed edited various videos of politicians breaking their promises. Each was edited more vile than the others.
30 years you've been dragging your feet, telling me I'm the reason we're stagnant. 30 years you've been claiming you're honest and promising progress, well where is it at?
Enid quickly wiped her tears and refocused on the documentary.
I don't want you to feel like a failure. I know this hurts, but I gave you your chance to deliver. Now it's my turn. Don't get me wrong.
Ed,
you've had a great run, but it's time to give the people something different. So without further ado, I like to introduce my album. My album. Hope.
The broken promises were stopped, and Abed entered footage of Edward's efforts instead.
What's my definition of success? Listening to what your heart says. Standing up for what you know is right while everybody else is tucking their toe between their legs.
The inspiring musical score, plus the edited footage of people filled with hope, lit something up inside the audience's heart.
What's my definition of success? Creating something no one else can. Being brave enough to dream big. Grinding when you're told to just quit. Giving more when you got nothing left. It's a person that'll take a chance on something they were told could never happen.
Abed added footage of Edward's challenges, his injuries, his enemies, and many more.
It's a person that can see the bright side through the dark times when there ain't more. It's when someone who ain't never had nothing ain't afraid to walk away from more profit cause they'd rather do something that they really love and take the pay cut. It's a person that would never waver or change who they are just to try and gain some credibility so they can feel accepted by a stranger.
If Edward had 40 million loyal followers before, the number almost doubled when the documentary finished screening in the cinema.
It's a person that can take the failures in their life and turn them into motivation. It's believing in yourself when no one else does. It's amazing what a little bit of faith can do. If you don't even believe in you, why would you think or expect anybody else that's around you to? I done did things that I regret. I done said things I can't take back. Was a lost soul at a crossroad who had no hope, but I changed that.
From his young age to his current stage, Abed inserted all of that into the edit.
I spent years of my life holding on to things I never should have kept, full of hatred. Years of my life carrying a lot of baggage that I should have walked away from. Years of my life wishing I was someone different, looking for some validation. Years of my life trying to fill a void, pretending I was in them. They get it. Growing pains a necessary evil, difficult to go through, yes, but beneficial. Some would say having a mental breakdown is a negative thing, which on one hand I agree, but on the other hand it was the push I needed to get help and start the healing process. See, if I'd never hit my bottom, would I be the person that I am today? I don't believe so.
Linda, Edward's past therapist, listened to the lyrics and smiled. Sage did the same thing.
I'm a perfect example of what happens when you choose to not accept defeat and face your demons. Took me
17 years
I said if you want to get the opportunity to be the greatest version of yourself, sometimes you gotta be someone you're not to hear the voice of reason. Having kids will make you really take a step back and look in the mirror, at least for me, that's what it did. I wake up.
The goosebumps-inducing edit faded as Abed cut to the final chapter of the documentary. Chapter 6, Behind the Veil. Edward finally appeared on screen, filmed during a quiet morning workout at the ranch, just one day after the wedding. Why are you exercising? Didn't the doctor tell you not to exercise for now? Abed asked from behind the camera. Edward smiled, dropped into a one-arm push-up, and replied, I get too antsy if I don't work out. Abed pressed further. Is that it? Or is it because of the lurking threats all around you that make it impossible to stop? That too, Edward admitted with a casual shrug, unaware that Abed would include this footage. Abed used the moment to shift the tone of the documentary. He showed Edward's pale complexion during the wedding, how he needed to sit down while singing, the subtle dizziness while eating. The myth began to unravel, but in its place, something deeper took root. The more Edward appeared vulnerable, the more respect he earned. The tall image that once towered in the minds of younger viewers became real, grounded, and even more admirable. Abed wanted to include more scenes with Edward's family and friends, but Troy intervened. What if people start seeing his family as a weakness? What if they get targeted next? Your documentary needs some compromise. Troy warned, fully suited in his Doctor Who cosplay, pacing back and forth. Abed narrated as the documentary approached its end. There's a reason documentaries end with some profound quote. A violin cue. A slow fade to black. It's the unspoken rule of storytelling. Give the audience resolution. Tie the string. Tuck the loose ends. But that would be a lie here. And I try not to lie in documentaries. It feels rude. Edward Newgate isn't a finished story. He's a paradox in motion, part idol, part insurgent, part kid still trying to find his place in the world. He's not a hero because he wants to be. He didn't shoulder the future of the world because he wanted to. He's just someone who never gave himself permission to quit. And that alone? That scares people more than any mind control ever could. We went looking for a mask to pull off. Instead, we found layers. And each one told the same story. As Edward's wedding performance of Thinking Out Loud played softly in the background, Abed delivered his final voiceover. For fairness. For justice. For the people who were never given a second chance. And maybe, just maybe, for the version of himself that didn't survive. I know what you want right now. A moral. A takeaway. Something quotable. But this documentary isn't a lecture. It's a mirror. And the only real ending is what you do after this. Edward's life is still ongoing. We might hope he'll stay the same. We might put the burden of expectations on him, hailing him as a savior. Maybe he can bear all that on his shoulders. But should he? Can't he just be a kid, for a little while longer? The screen faded to black. Audience members walked out of the screening in silence. Some were dazed. Others were crying. Everyone was thinking. And by the next morning, the internet was on fire. I came for the super soldier fight. One viewer posted on Instagram. I stayed for everything else. Also, you won't be disappointed with the fight scene. Rotten Tomatoes posted a certified fresh score of 91% from critics, with one headline calling it a disarmingly intimate dismantling of hero worship, told through a lens that cuts deeper than most fictional biopics. But not everyone was impressed. A polished propaganda reel dressed up as cinema verite wrote a more cynical review from The New Yorker. Less truth, more myth maintenance. Only time would tell which version people would believe. Still, the momentum was undeniable. Stan Lee even commented on the documentary, posting a heartfelt video review on Instagram. You know, I've created a lot of heroes in my time. Some of them can crawl on walls, some turn green when they're angry, and some just have a really good tailor and a heart of gold. But this kid, Eddie, he's something else. He's not a superhero because he has powers. He's a superhero because he chooses to do the right thing, even when the world keeps punching him in the gut. And that documentary? That wasn't just a film. That was an origin story. A real one. Raw. Unscripted. Messy. When I watched him standing up to the bad guys, corporate monsters, crooked politicians, even his own trauma, I thought, that's Peter Parker. That's Steve Rogers. That's every damn panel I ever drew. Only this time, it's not fiction. And I gotta say, if there are kids out there watching that documentary, if they see what Edward did and they think to themselves, maybe I can be brave too. Then, my boy, we've got ourselves a new kind of hero. And lucky for us, this one's real. Excelsior. When asked later which superhero Edward most resembled, Stan paused thoughtfully and replied, he's got the brain of Reed Richards, the discipline of Steve Rogers, and the grit of Peter Parker. But if I had to pick? Honestly, he's Nightwing. Even if that's a DC character. Handsome, agile, a born leader with a heart for the people. The comment created a trending hashtag on Twitter. Hashtag Edward as Nightwing, hashtag Warner Brothers make it happen. Edward POV. 2 days had passed since I inherited Seiki's powers. I deliberately ignored the reactions to the documentary, muted alerts, shut off apps. Not because I didn't care. I just had more pressing concerns. But somehow, the numbers still found me. 170 million? I blinked at the text from Pepper. The documentary had made $170 million on its opening weekend alone. I leaned back, confused. Is the impact of the Super Soldier leak really that big? Chapter 390, Quick Summer. Edward POV. Summertime. Bikinis. Water guns. Girls dancing on cars. Too bad I couldn't enjoy any of that, because I had to work. A few weeks had passed since Cuba. It was already August, and my girlfriend and I were on completely different schedules. In the 3 weeks we'd been apart, we'd only managed to meet twice. She was busy promoting her new song, doing interviews and performing. Bad Monkey had exploded. She'd been on tour ever since. We did get one break together. Coachella. Our schedules overlapped just long enough. We performed on stage, disguised ourselves, danced in the crowd, and even crashed in tents like regular fans. Meanwhile, I was knee-deep in finishing Now You See Me. Over 90% of the film was shot, and all of my scenes were already done. For the role of FBI agent Dylan Rhodes, I originally wanted Cillian Murphy, but he was tied up with another project. So I cast Nicholas Hoult instead, and honestly, he delivered. And then there was the documentary. It shattered cinema records, grossing over $700 million worldwide. Abed was hailed as a genius filmmaker overnight, and had already jumped into his next meta-style project. I handed him the Free Guy script, hoping his unique vision could elevate it. Of course, he wanted me in the lead role. But I was already juggling too much. "Edward, want some watermelon?" Vanessa asked, walking over with a plate of fruit in hand. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and a golden bikini as we sailed across the ocean on my yacht, spending the last days of summer heading toward the Bahamas. We'd be staying at my dad's summer home for the week. "Yeah, sure. But only if you feed me," I said childishly. She grinned. Open wide. Not the kiwi, wait, not with the skin still on. I protested as she tried to shove it into my mouth. I'd offered Frankie the chance to come along, but she decided to head back to work. "I'm already bored of traveling," she said. Her early fears about late-age pregnancy had faded once she knew about my abilities. So she resumed her duties as usual. "This is the first time you're actually using the yacht to go somewhere," Vanessa said, resting her head on my chest. "It's been collecting dust for months." "Yeah, well, I never had time to relax. Always rushing somewhere." I looked out over the endless ocean. Despite all the traveling I'd done, there was something romantic about being at sea. "Makes me want to yell yo-ho-ho-ho and sing Bink Sake," I quipped. "What? You want sake?" Vanessa blinked. "I think there's a bottle below deck." I pulled her back into my arms. "No, stay." She giggled and nestled closer. "Hey, Ed," she said after a moment, her tone shifting. "You're not going to be held responsible for the boxing match, right?" I gave her a small smile. He was asking for it. But no, I don't think so. It all started with a string of viral videos. A professional boxer, 10 years older, kept calling me out on social media. "I'd fold him in a round," he said in one. In another, he laughed. "I'll make that little punk my bitch in the ring. Then, he'll understand what a real man looks like." Then he claimed the super soldier stuff was fake. Even dragged my family into it, saying they were helping me lie to the world. My fans didn't take it well. Neither did I. They were flaming the boxer relentlessly on the internet, memeing him into oblivion. But they kept falling to his rage baiting. So I fired back with a short clip. "Pick a date. I'm not running." Legally, I couldn't sign the contract. I was still 17. But I was emancipated, and I let my father co-sign the waiver to keep it clean. The commission approved it as an exhibition. No headgear. Just gloves and a ring. The boxer was thrilled. His baiting had worked. He was banking on fame, endorsements, maybe millions in streaming royalties. But before we confirmed the match, I made him sign a clause. All of his profits would go to charity. "If this is about proving who's stronger," I told him, "then money shouldn't matter. You wanted this, right? Don't say it's all a plot to fatten your bank account with a fake match." He stalled for 3 days while the internet mocked him into oblivion. Eventually, he caved and agreed, claiming he just wanted to teach me a lesson in humility. That was last week. He still hasn't woken up from his coma. The fight was streamed live on Netflix. A massive global event. It opened with a match between 2 female boxers, a fast, technical bout that fans loved. Then came my fight. The Irish guy walked into the ring with a grin, taunting, putting on a show. I ignored it. The bell rang. He stayed guarded for a moment, then lunged forward. I sidestepped and landed a clean right hook. His body hit the mat hard, bounced, even, before going still. Eyes rolled white. The stadium fell silent. Online, the trolls vanished. Even the loudest voices had nothing to say. The meme makers stalled. The Twitter warriors went suspiciously quiet. Then came the backlash. Some conservative outlets clutched their pearls. He should have forgiven him, they scolded. Violence isn't the answer. A few even accused me of deliberately putting the guy in a coma, as if he were some fragile puppy I kicked out of spite. But others pushed back. He signed the papers. He knew what he was walking into. He asked for this. For once, people started to grasp how I could go toe-to-toe with super soldiers, not with brute rage, but clean, clinical efficiency. And that's all it took. One punch. One real punch to scatter the flies, clear the air, and send the leeches crawling back into their echo chambers. The fans noticed how bored I looked in the match. It invoked masochistic tendencies in some. They wanted to get punched too, like what? A few boxers reached out afterward, not to mock, not to bait, but to spar. Respectfully. As athletes. As professionals. They weren't chasing clout or clicks. They just wanted a clean match. I accepted their offers. Honestly, that was more fun than doing the exhibition match. The truth is, the fight wasn't a tantrum or a stunt. It was a surgical design. A calculated strike to cut through the layers of obsessive idol worship building around me. People had started seeing me as a brand, a banner, a belief system. Untouchable. Perfect. Golden. The documentary wasn't helping me at all. And I needed to remind them, I bleed too. I hit back. I'm not your fantasy. I'm real. Even after all that, the dent in my reputation was barely a scratch. And that, more than anything, was what exasperated me. Idol worship was really dangerous, and I didn't want people to start calling me the Messiah. I'm not Timothée Chalamet in Dune. I'd put someone into a coma for nothing. The trip to the Bahamas took time. 2 full days just across the Panama Canal. 10 days overall. We were moving fast, much faster than a typical yacht, which would have taken 4 to 6 weeks for the same journey. Vanessa and I grew incredibly close during that time. Just the two of us, gliding over endless blue, sharing sunrises and silence, also sexy times. A lot of them. But while I was at sea, something else surfaced. The coma guy woke up a few days back. Turns out he stayed silent deliberately. Pretending he was still unconscious to frame me further, hoping the attack on me could get bigger. Maybe he thought it would be a career-defining performance. I was even rooting for him. Do it. Destroy my reputation. Until the doctor in charge of his care, someone secretly in my fan club, blew the whistle. The backlash flipped like a switch. Suddenly he was the villain. People accused him of faking the entire coma. News outlets cited leaked medical reports showing I hadn't caused any real damage. No fractures. No brain bleed. Barely even swelling. Professional therapists came forward, diagnosing the episode as psychological, trauma-induced catatonia, maybe, or just high-stakes humiliation with a side of ego collapse. Because the truth was simple, I hadn't hit him that hard. I used my Sharingan. Just enough to tip his mind over the edge and let it rest in darkness. It wasn't supposed to blow up like this. It was supposed to humble him. Instead, it came back and bit me, twice. I should plan another incident. Something else that would fracture my image. I muttered as I contemplated an idea. It was something I needed to be able to bounce back on, nothing irreversible. But I'm also afraid. If I did reveal stuff like smoking joints publicly, the people will petition for weed to be legalized earlier in this timeline. After spending a week together in the Bahamas, we flew back to California while an employee drove the yacht home. As soon as I returned, I was invited to a talk show with Conan O'Brien. Luckily, Conan's new studio wasn't in New York. The audience cheered as I stepped on stage. The cheering was so overwhelming, Conan actually struggled to take control of the studio. We had to sit there awkwardly, waiting for the crowd to calm down. "Wow! Extra energy tonight, huh?" Conan said, mock scolding them, which made everyone laugh. "So, Edward. Nice tan," he said, eyeing my slightly darker complexion. "Is it from working under the sun, just shoveling dirt and all?" Conan mimed digging with exaggerated strain on his face, which made the audience laugh again. I chuckled too, already expecting him to bring up that picture of me in Cuba. Well, I only did that for a day. The tan's from the Bahamas sun. I just got back from a short vacation. Conan nodded and said, "Well, it's nice to see you took a break. I was shocked to see you working on the movie right after you got out of the hospital." We chatted a bit, and then Conan got gossipy. "Did you go to the island alone?" "Not alone," I said with a mischievous look, which made the crowd gasp dramatically. Conan mock gasped and slid his chair closer, resting his chin on his hand like a girl at a slumber party. Who did you go with?" "I'm not telling you," I replied playfully, acting bashful. "But it's a girl. We talked about a lot of things, mostly about the documentary. I had pulled it out of theaters after only 3 weeks, which confused people since the numbers weren't slowing down. We're going to donate the profits to charity. 350 million will go to a good cause," I announced, which earned loud applause from the audience. "Yeah, so you don't want the numbers to get any higher because you'd feel too difficult to keep the promise if you saw them, right?" Conan teased. "That too. Like, I'm still shocked." "It's a documentary," I said, gesturing to the crowd, which made them laugh again. "You know, I haven't even watched it yet," Conan admitted, earning jeers from the audience. He shouted defensively, "Oh, come on! I've had no free time." I gave him a serious look, like questioning his audacity, which only made the crowd laugh harder. "Well, you can still see it on Netflix. And then take a photo to prove you completed the assignment," I said with a teacher-like tone. Some of the audience members were confused as to why I only donated 350 million instead of 700 million. Conan heard the murmurs and then stopped the interview to turn to the audience member and clarify it. "The numbers are split between the cinema and the studio." In fact, getting half of it was already a testament to his studio's capability. 350 million is everything his company gets, without him taking any profits from it at all. The audience became more amazed when Conan told that. Well, studio audiences at least. It would be cut from the final edit of the talk show. After the show aired, articles flooded the internet. Tabloids speculated endlessly about who the mystery girl in the Bahamas was. Coincidentally, Taylor hadn't made any public appearances in the last 2 weeks. Neither had Barbara Palin or Selena Gomez. People also pointed fingers at Emma Stone, given her status as my best friend in the celebrity circle. Fans, mostly teenage girls, were crying online. The reactions were intense. I was honestly afraid to mention Vanessa's name anywhere. That's what you get for constantly flirting with people. Now they're acting like crazy ex-girlfriends trying to tear the new girl down. Alex commented while we worked on AIDS research in the lab back at the mansion. "Alex, I'm really glad you're here, and we can research together. But why are you standing so far away from me?" I asked, confused, as I noticed she moved her things 10 meters away. She kept her gaze away from me, taking a step away when I took a step closer. "Shut up, pervert. I'm definitely not going near you. You. Perverted hound dog." Alex still couldn't shake the image of seeing Vanessa, Abby, and me stepping out of the same cabin. She kept blushing around me, especially around Vanessa. Her fragile childlike innocence couldn't accept what I had done. If she could, she would make me walk down naked through the streets while she shouted shame at me from behind. "Alex, be careful with that. That sample's dangerous," I warned as she carried a tray of highly infectious materials to the cryo storage. What? I am being careful. She huffed. She was being careful, not playing around recklessly in the lab. But she dropped one of the vials as the cryo door edge hit the tray she was holding. I couldn't reach it in time, she was too far. Alex! I shouted, yanking her away as the vial shattered. Alert! Alert! The lab is compromised. Initiating decontamination process. Oracle blared through the speakers, instantly locking the lab. Shit! I pulled Alex toward the emergency shower and wrapped my arms around her before turning on the water. The shower was built for one, so we had to squeeze in together. Close your eyes, Alex. The decontamination rail hurt them. I warned. I'm sorry. I was careful, she stammered. Don't worry. Accidents happen. Alert! Alert! Please remove all contaminated clothing. Alert! Alert! Please remove all contaminated clothing. Oracle repeated itself, while ceiling-mounted lasers began tracking us. Oracle. That's fine. All clothing must be removed. Level 4 contamination protocol requires complete removal. Please comply. It insisted. Alex froze. Wha? Fine. I'll take it off. She snapped, glaring at me like it was somehow my fault. What? I blinked as she flung her lab coat aside. And then the laser began burning it. Please remove all items, Miss Dunphy. Oracle chimed again. You really are a pervert. Even your AI is perverted. Alex shouted, blushing fiercely. In the end, both of us stripped down to our underwear, standing back to back under the shower while Oracle performed the decontamination. This is all your fault, Alex grumbled as she pressed her back skin onto mine. How is it my fault? You dropped it, I argued. But you designed the program, she argued again. Now I have to be naked in front of a boy. No one had seen me naked before. If it'll make you feel better. I didn't peek yet, I told her. She gasped and almost stomped on my leg. Don't have the intention to peek at all. What do you mean yet? Both of us closed our eyes as the decontamination ray was running. Only our touch senses were active, and honestly it made the situation a little bit weird. 30 minutes later, the lab was secured. Decontamination complete, Oracle said. Backup clothing is available in the compartment to your right. I was about to turn when Alex shouted. Edward! Don't look! Close your eyes! Let me change first. Fine. I sighed. But hurry up. It's freezing in here. The lab door burst open. My girlfriend stepped in, clearly worried after hearing Oracle's emergency alert echo across the mansion. Edward! What hap? She froze. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, me, half naked. Alex, half naked. The two of us were still dripping wet under the Deccan shower. Wait! Ness! Don't get the wrong idea! I shouted quickly. Ness narrowed her eyes and said, Oracle told me you need to be naked to decontaminate. So I understand it. But now, your reaction is telling me there's something more to it. Then she threw a towel at my face. General POV. In a shocking but carefully negotiated move, the U.S. trade embargo on Cuba was officially lifted. The island nation immediately declared its neutrality on the world stage, a decision that left some of its traditional allies feeling betrayed. But after Sato personally visited several presidents across Latin America, offering private incentives and quiet reassurances, the tone shifted. Public opinion warmed. And within days, Cuba was again considered a strong, if independent, friend to them all. Money makes the whole world go around, it's the same thing here. The next bombshell came fast. Cuba had signed a massive deal to purchase next-generation maglev trains, fully designed by Edward Newgate himself. The announcement sent shockwaves through international media, not just because of the deal's scale, but because of Edward's deep ancestral ties to the country. Critics accused him of giving Cuba a sweetheart deal. Favoritism for his mother's homeland, they said. But Edward made no public comment. Meanwhile, another project was quietly gaining momentum within the country. A biopic about Edward's mother, with Ana de Armas cast in the lead. Her English still wasn't strong at this point, so Edward had her enrolled in private lessons, personally enhanced by his teaching aura, which dramatically sped up learning. The film's development remained a domestic secret, for now. Cuba's sudden growth seemed impossible to ignore. Gold had been discovered. And something strange was happening with agriculture, something locals were calling a miracle. Farms expanded overnight. Seeds planted in the morning bore fruit by sunset. And it all began the day Edward stepped foot on Cuban soil. Locals whispered of the Carmen family's blessing, and that the land had simply been waiting for his return. Now, Edward was no longer just admired, he was worshipped. Statues, murals, and shrines sprang up in days. Even skeptics found it hard to call it coincidence. Work speeds across the country tripled. In weeks, the entire city sewer system neared completion, a project that had been stagnating for decades. Returning tourists, especially those from the US, were shocked by what they saw. Solar panels on every home. Kinetic energy pads on the roads. The dingy houses were transformed into luxurious apartments. Wind towers, hydroloops, urban farming towers, efficient water systems. Cuba was running on renewable energy like a testbed for a futuristic eco-city. Other nations, especially oil-rich ones, grew quietly alarmed. And oil giants? They were beginning to panic. Cuba's education reform, green infrastructure, high-speed transit, and rising cultural exports were now moving in tandem. And at the center of it all stood one person. Wayne Bruce, the ex-FBI agent who had quit after falling in love with Camila, Edward's aunt, found the Carmen house in the suburbs and was confused. "When did they rebuild the house?" he muttered. His presence alerted the occupant inside. His eyes widened as the person stepped out. "Camila?" he whispered in shock. Camila glared at him, her expression cold. "Why are you here, Mr. Bruce?" She was only there for a short visit, to check on the condition of the estate. Edward wanted to bring Miranda back home, and Camila had offered to return alone to make sure everything was perfect. She didn't expect to find the man she once loved standing in front of the house gate. "Did you get back from America to come and spy on me again?" Camila asked with a biting tone. Wayne, however, just smiled, his face filled with relief. "You're alive!" Tears began pooling in his eyes. "I thought you were dead." He had been searching for her. His heart dropped when he heard that the entire rebel group was destroyed by the last regime. He had stayed in Cuba for almost 2 years, searching for traces of her. That wraps up this part of What If Karmic Gacha system in Modern Family World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Transmigrated and Taking Over Ichigo's Body, 2 parts, and What If Becoming a Mangaka in One Piece World, 3 parts, will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next 2 projects for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if hosting Q&A in One Piece World? What if Transmigrated in Ben 10 World as Ben's cousin? What if Transmigrated in Danmachi World with the system? Please vote in the poll and let me know which stories you'd like to see next. I'll take the top 2 picks and start working on those series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.